Because how are you going to experience the presence of God if you yourself aren't present? How are you even going to know that He's walked into the room when you don't even know where you're at? Yeah, welcome back to The Night Shift, where we discuss how young Christians can better live out their faith in a culture that is not conducive to Christianity. I am joined today, again, by Carrie Grace, the first guest that was ever on this podcast,
yes.
And still the most popular podcast episode we've ever had. Give it up for
wow.
her. Yeah, everybody.
Okay,
Everybody in the peanut gallery, give it up. So you may be asking yourself, hey, why does this guy, he only has his family members on his podcast? And to that, I say you're absolutely right. Yeah, but today is a very special day because, you know what, I'm actually going to let you do the honors of telling everybody what is so special that's been going on recently. So
cool.
Go.
Okay. So this actually, the journey started years ago for me. 2019. So it's been a while before I'm finally at a point where I can celebrate this with everybody else. And that is, I wrote this book. And basically, it's not actually a book. It's more like a workbook. And I had gone through quite a bit of transition in my life. I had been running an organization that was helping women get out of being sexually exploited. And great job, love the organization. It was amazing, but I realized through that process of transitioning out of that organization just how much of myself I had disconnected from. And I think you kind of get crept up on by the reality that you're still living, you're still getting up every day and going through the motions and checking off the list, but how much of my life was actually full and abundant. Mm-hmm. And I just remember I'd left that job. I hadn't gotten a new job yet. So I was in this place of what the heck did I just do? I'm a single mom. This is super scary. And I remember spending a lot of time just in my bedroom going, what am I supposed to do now? Yeah. And it was during that time that I started writing this workbook. I wasn't actually trying to write something. I just started taking a full-on inventory of my own life and going, what parts of my life are working for me and which ones are holding me back?
Right.
And it was just this opportunity, I get to build the life that I want to actually live.
Yes.
And if I get the opportunity to do that, I'm not going to do it halfway this time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let 90% of my life be caught up in my career and then trying to fit everything else into 10% that was left over.
Yeah.
So in my own journey, I really started tapping into some cool stuff that was really working well for me. So I turned it into, shameless plug, this program. It's called Refresh. This is actually my editor's proof. So it has this little thing across it. Don't pay attention to that.
Very cool.
But it's now available on Amazon. And I'm super excited because this is a tool that anybody could use to really just look at your life and go, okay, how are my finances?
Right.
What is my relationship with God like? How am I managing my other relationships? How's my health? It's just helping you to really take a good look into your life and get every area of your life working for you and supporting you.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of a speech that I heard Matthew McConaughey give, where he talks about we're all gardeners and we have different gardens, and it's our job to maintain and water those different gardens. And when we begin to see things wither in one area, well, that requires more of our focus. But so many people don't even have the inventory of their life overall in general to begin with. They don't know what they're supposed to be watering. They don't know what they need to be focusing on because they've never actually sat down and taken ownership of their life, right? And decided okay, these are the things that are really important to me. These are the things that need to get watered. And these are the things that I'm willing to sacrifice in order to do these things very, very well. And it really gives people the opportunity to develop an internal locus of control rather than an external locus of control, which if you've never taken like a college psychology class, it basically just means that if you have an external locus of control, you have this perception that life just happens to you, that things just come along and you just kind of have to ride the wave as best you can. An internal locus of control tells you that, you know what, I get to construct the life that I want for myself. And I can do that based on a plethora of different things. I can do that based on my own personal ambitions, or I can do that based on a conviction and a mission given to me by God. That's kind of, obviously what we try to preach. But just having the ownership and the responsibility to say, I'm going to build this life to be effective at what God has placed me here to do. And it really seems like this was something that you wrote for yourself to do that.
Yes.
Like this was the tool that you used. This wasn't the answer of, okay, this is what your life should look like, and this is how you get it. It was a template, really, to take ownership and guide you along the process of really filling in the blanks for yourself and deciding, this is what my life looks like right now. This is who believe I am called to be and what I'm called to do. And how do I get from A to B, right? And so this seems like an incredible tool for that. Well done.
Thanks. Yeah, it really was it's a process that I walked through. And if you back up just a little bit, there's a story that I share at the beginning of this workbook. We're going to call it a workbook
right.
for this conversation. Anyway, there was a particular moment when everything sort of just came, I would say, it kind of all came to a crushing point in my life. At the time, I was making back-to-back trips to Iraq. I was working with the women who had been trafficked by ISIS. After they were recovered, they were placed in refugee camps and they were just committing suicide. There was no trauma care. There was no stabilization. So I was invited to come in and to create a program within the refugee camps to help stabilize the women, to keep them from committing suicide. And it was through that process that, first of all, I learned a lot about what it actually takes to stabilize your life.
Yes.
And that's kind of level one. And as I was seeing that happen for these women in Iraq, it was literally the same process that needed to happen with the women I was serving here in America who had been trafficked. It's, first of all, it's just stabilizing your life so that you're not on a daily basis being triggered
right.
to the point that it's throwing you off your game. Yeah. And, all of us have triggers. It doesn't matter if you've been trafficked or not trafficked. We all have triggers because we live on planet Earth. But when triggers become something that you're identifying more with than victory and overcoming, then that's a problem and you're being held back in life. So I was learning a lot about stabilization, but at the same time, I'm making these trips. I'm a single mom, you're playing basketball. So if I'm not at work, I'm in a gym, which was awesome, but it was just, there was no downtime for me.
Right.
And I remember meeting after, I think it was my third trip back to Iraq. I met with my board at the time and I was ready to take some time off. I'd worked there for 2 years. I'd never taken a day off in 2 years. And I was like, I'm pretty burned out. So I go to a board meeting and I ask, hey, could I go ahead and take 2 weeks off? And I just need some time to kind of recoup. I'd seen some pretty bad stuff and I was a little tripped up. And sometimes stories just get stuck. And I was having that happen to me. And I just wanted to kind of stabilize my own self and get things back under control. And their response at the time was, well, how much money's in the bank? Because you may need to go fundraise before you can take some time off. And in that moment, I was like crushed.
Yeah. I
felt like they didn't see me. They didn't see how hard I'd worked. It didn't matter. It wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And they said, go ahead and take the time off if you need it. But, their first concern was about money.
Yeah.
And I couldn't let that go. And so it was a moment where it wasn't an option for me to, at that point, to learn how to reset expectations that were more realistic.
Right.
My response was, well, I have to prove to them that I am working hard. I've got to work harder to prove that I can do it all, and they can trust me. And that wasn't their fault. That was what was in me. That was the mechanism that I was operating out of that was completely unhealthy because
Right.
my value is attached to performance
Yeah.
and getting results. And so if they didn't think I had gotten enough, then I had to try harder. And that's where it goes back to not feeling like a victim or
Right.
life is happening to me, but to look at that scenario and go, in that moment, I had two paths in front of me. I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
I thought I only had one. And so I worked even harder. And all that did was lead to me getting to a point where I'm now sitting in my bedroom all alone. I don't have that job anymore. And it was just a hard ending. And when you look at your life and you realize I poured everything I had out and sacrificed, and you more than anyone knew because you lived with me and saw. And why? Why did I do that to myself? Why did I do that to my family, to our life? Why did I feel the need to do that? And it came down to my own self-worth.
Right.
And if I wasn't getting the approval from other people, then I didn't have enough worth. So I would just say that any place in our life that is taking up too much of our time, energy, and focus,
Right.
it is probably out of whack because there's something in that particular area of our life that has a lie attached to it. And that lie is dictating that we constantly tend to that one area. So for some people, it may be, working out and their physical body, like they're so a slave to
Right.
that. And there's a message attached to that, a lie attached to that. Yes, we want to be healthy, but what is the unhealthy message that can attach itself to that? And that's really what it is with any area of our lives. If we look at an area and we go, oh my gosh, my finances are a mess. Okay, well, what are we believing that, is it we're overspending and we're overindulging because we're trying to satisfy something in ourselves that's unhealthy?
Right.
So it's really, I had 30 days of in between jobs where I walked through my own process of looking at my morning routine, my evening routine,
Yeah.
my workouts, like every aspect of my life. And that's how I created the personal inventory tool
Yeah.
that you do at the beginning of this this journey. And it helps you to really go, okay, this is where I want to focus first and get
Yeah.
this in order, But
Yeah.
it allows you to, it's your own journey. I'm not telling you how to live your life. I'm helping you to ask yourself the questions.
Right. Yeah. And that's the important thing is learning the art of asking yourself questions is so important. And somebody was telling me the other day, being curious about things that would usually just bother you. And we assume if something's bothering us, then that thing is bad. But in reality, it's an opportunity to learn something. And so, it might be a real hassle to look at that messy room that is your 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. or your 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. or your 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., right? Those are kind of like different chapters in our day, right? And for a lot of us, one or two of those chapters are painfully under cared for. And so looking at that at first might be really stressful. It might be such a hassle, but if you can learn to ask questions in the midst of looking at that dirty little mess, whether it's poor time management, whether it's poor financial management, just poor stewardship in general in one area, and we all have that area. So there's you've got to get rid of the shame of that so that you can be curious and ask yourself, what is the lie that has caused me to steward this so poorly, right? You mentioned overspending. There's a lie attached to that your self-worth has something to do with the clothes that you wear or the car that you drive or the amount of times that you're able to buy drinks for your friends or whatever the stupid lie is, right? There's something attached to that for sure. In time, there's usually a lie of low self-worth attached to that because you think that everything is worth your time and it's not. And we love to say that, audit who is worth your time and things like that because we love hearing that we're so important. But there are a lot of things that you want that probably aren't worth your time. There's a person that's really cute that you may want, but they're not worth your time. There's a plate of food that just looks so good, but it's not worth your time. So it's difficult to kind of audit those things. And I assume that was kind of hard for you to ask those questions at first, but after you got past that starting point, you're like, okay, this is where my life is at right now. What was your process then moving forward?
Yeah, I need 2 microphones for this announcement. Listen, hey, if this is bringing value to you, if you're relating to this, go ahead and hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, do all the things that everybody tells you to do all the time, literally always. It really helps the channel out, and let's be honest, this is a message that more young people need to hear. So go for it. All right, back to what you came.
After I took a deep inventory, I looked back and went, okay, if this is my pattern, where did it originate?
Right.
So let's just take, for example, my morning routine. Okay. I don't know how long I have had my morning routine. Okay.
Yes.
I'm very disciplined when it comes to, I do the same exact things every morning. Right.
Yeah.
And for some people that wake up last minute and they're just like trying to rush out the door and get to work on time, they look at me and they're like, oh, wow, she's so disciplined, right? She does this whole routine. Well, this is the thing. You can have a routine and it could be void of anything that is actually life-giving for you.
Right.
Just because you have a routine doesn't mean anything. It's what are you filling it with really?
Yeah.
And so I have, time every morning with the Lord where I'm journaling, praying, reading the Word. But if I'm just going through the motions, then there's no life in it. And
Right.
so it was really looking back and going, okay, so I established this morning routine. Why? When did I start doing this? What was the motive and the purpose of it? And where am I today?
Right.
And how did I get here? And so in that process, and this is how I kind of flipped the script. And this is what I think is really cool and unique about this, the way this program is written. When you do the personal inventory, you actually write it from the perspective of, let's say you have reached the pinnacle of success in every area of your life. Okay, you're financially where you have always wanted to be, what you've visualized, your health, your relationships, where you live, everything is at the pinnacle of success. Okay, you're killing it in every category of life. From there, that's where you write the personal inventory.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're going to say, okay, where does this Carrie, where does she live? Does she live in the city, the country? Does she live in a suburb? Is she near water? Is she near mountains? Where does she live? What does she eat on a daily basis to fuel her body? The best version of Carrie, what does she feed herself every day? How does she work out every single day? What is her work-life balance? How does she schedule her day? Is she routine? Is she, free? What does that look like? And from there, you write your personal inventory.
Right.
That way, it's not like, well, I'm here, but I want to be there.
Yeah.
It is like, if I'm here, what does that actually look like?
Mm-hmm.
Then you build your life so that that's where you end up.
Mm-hmm.
So then you go back through and evaluate every area of your life in a way that goes, if this is what I want to experience, then what does it take to live that way?
Right.
And you just start doing that.
Yeah. And you build it out in a way to where once you get there, you're still 100% the person you are. Grown, obviously, but you haven't sacrificed any parts of yourself along the way, which is what society tells us to do all the time with the hustle and the grind. And it's like, the most disciplined, hardworking people that I know are not people that work 20 hours a day. They are people that optimize that 8, 9, 10-hour window and optimize the other parts of their life to where they can be as effective as possible in that 8, 9, or 10-hour window. Those are the most disciplined, best, hardworking people I've ever seen. They're not the people that are staying up till 4 a.m. working, right? Because usually it's drawn by necessity of either lack of wisdom, saying yes to too many things, or another area of laziness like procrastination that causes them to then be put in that situation.
Yes.
So the super successful person doesn't always look like the person that's grinding harder than everybody else and pushing through all that, because the harder you grind against yourself, the less effective you become in any area of your life. So I love that this is set up, and obviously, like I've seen a lot of the material, I've heard a lot of the material, and it's set up in a way that nurtures the parts of your soul that you want to retain so that you can enjoy it when you get there. And I love the idea of asking yourself those questions of like, okay, where does Carrie live? You know, what does Carrie like to eat? Like all of these different things. And it's basically crafting the perfect fairy tale, which we are so good at while we're young, but while we're young, we don't have any ability. We don't have any skill. We don't have any intelligence to get there, right? We just have the ability to dream. And as we're older, as we grow, we're told, no, you need to focus on gaining the ability. You need to focus on gaining the agency and the skill so that you can get where you want to go in life. But we forget how to dream. So oftentimes people are just chasing the next carrot that's put in front of them and utilizing their ability and their skill to do that, rather than taking a step back, accessing that childlike part of our brain, reframing everything and dreaming. Because now we can craft the fairy tale, but we also have the ability to walk our little selves over there. I think that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, there's a scripture that says, without vision, people perish. And I think that a lot of us, as we get older, we forget that imagination that God gave us that is the only place we can tap into creating.
Yes.
And he made us to be co-creators. All right. We're made in his image. And so we get to create, we get to dream, we get to do all those things. He built it into us. And that's how everything we're currently experiencing is, because someone saw it, they had a vision of it, and they created it, right? Like this table, somebody had a vision of this, and then they brought it about, and now I'm sitting at it.
Right.
So nothing happens without first having a vision. And I feel like when we let go of our own vision, a lot of times it's because we have forgotten that we have something valuable to offer to the world. And when we don't value what we carry, we won't bring it about. We won't nurture it. We won't steward it, like Matthew McConaughey was saying. And we'll just let it wither. And to me, it's like he gave us that ability so that we could truly bring about the very things that he put in us to usher into the world around us.
Yeah.
So if you tap into your imagination and you allow yourself to see a vision, then that vision is what motivates you, versus that's an internal motivator versus an external reaction to life.
Right.
And there were, on a daily basis in my life previously, before I walked through this journey, there were enough things to react to every single day to keep me busy.
Yeah.
And I could just keep putting out fires and doing the next thing and reacting and responding to everyone around me. And that's where I think what you're talking about is that then you get overcommitted.
Yes.
Because you're not valuing your own purpose. You're not valuing your own journey enough. You'll jump off of yours at every whim and react, versus staying the course and knowing, okay, this actually fits within what I am called to do.
Yeah.
And I was telling a group of ladies today, I was training them in how to do grant writing, which is not exciting, but I said, you know, our mission at Freedom Shield is to create emergency housing for sex traffic survivors.
Yeah.
It is not our mission to create long-term housing programs. That's not our mission. So if someone came to me and said, I'll give you $5 million today if you'll do a long-term, housing program, I'm going to say, that's not what I do.
Right.
But I can tell you some organizations that I think would do that really, really well and would steward your money well. And that's what they do.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to get off of my mission just because somebody gives me money.
Yeah.
That I'm not equipped, I'm not gifted for that. Like, this is what I'm called to do.
Yeah.
And so I think that you have to know that. You have to have your own vision in order to steward it faithfully and not just give every minute of your life away.
Yeah.
And you get to the end of every day and every year and you haven't moved one step forward in your own life.
Yeah. So obviously, I love everything you just said. I obviously a lot of people, we talk a lot about like relationships and preparing to be the best spouse that you can possibly be. And a lot of people are going to be young, single believers, trying to develop themselves and kind of grow into the person that God created them to be for their future families. How could a tool like this aid them in that process? Because it's far more than just a way to excel in your career. This is a way to excel relationally with the people around you and to be present, which we'll talk about in a second, because I'm sure we'll have an interesting conversation about that. But how would this aid somebody growing into that kind of a role?
I wish I would have had this when I was in college. Like that would have been a dream, honestly, because again, what I love about how I wrote this is because so many times I would go buy the books of how other people were managing their, career or their relationships or whatever. And the truth of it is, their method is not going to work for me.
Yeah.
It's just not. I can learn and glean a few things from what they're doing that may be helpful, but I cannot overlay their process onto my life and it give me the same results or the results that I want.
Yeah.
So this is more of like a guided process where you're discovering for yourself what that's going to look like and how you're built. For instance, I love to run. I've always loved to run. It's what I want to do. Okay. That's what my body loves to do. And I'm going to do that as long as I can. And even though chiropractors were like, hey, you should probably stop because of your disc and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I can either stop now or I can stop later. Probably either way, I'm going to have some disc deteriorating. So I'm going to run because I can still run.
Yeah.
And why would I deprive myself of however many years I can still run? That's just my philosophy. Other people, if you don't hate, it's fine. If you want to stop running, chiropractor told you to, that's fine. I'm going to keep running. I am never going to be as passionate about weightlifting as someone who, a friend of mine that she loves weightlifting, and that is like her running.
Yeah.
So you get to build it out in a way that is truly unique to you. And I would say for someone that's in their early 20s that's getting the opportunity to build, you get to choose the materials that you're going to build with right now. You're not, and all of us got a package that we got from our parents. That's great. Some of it you're going to keep, some of it you're going to throw out. You get to sift through that stuff and decide. But you're at a point in your life where you can truly design your life.
Yeah.
And I believe this to my core because I work with women who have been trafficked. Okay? Like everything taken from them. You talk about victim status. They are truly, really victims. That one that I've worked with for years was trafficked from as young as she knows from an orphanage. So she didn't get to build anything for herself leading up to where she is today. And one of my favorite things to say to her is, now that you're free, you get to build your life however you want. And you're building a beautiful life for yourself. And if she can do it, any of us can do it. And that's honestly what kind of motivated me to offer this to just everyone, because honestly, sometimes I've seen survivors of sex trafficking and exploitation thrive more than women who had a great setup. And that's Roscoe, the pocket beagle. He was bound to make an appearance at some point.
He's left us alone for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, if someone who has had everything taken away from them, including their own free will, for as long as they can remember, if that person can take a hold of their life by the reins and begin to steer it in the direction that they want to go, anybody can. There's really no excuse for any of us. And especially talking about relationships, the last thing that you want in the entire world is to meet the person that God has for you with your life unordered, with yourself scattered and not on solid ground. That is the last thing that you want, especially coming from the male perspective where you're trying to lead somebody in a relationship. You do not want to be out of order when that person comes into your life. And so you want to have things set up in a way that are sustainable. You want to have a healthy lifestyle. You want to have your finances in a place that brings you peace, that gives you an ability and some margin to chase the person that you want to chase, right? You want to have your physical health in order in a way that allows you to pursue the life that you want. So I think that this is just so invaluable coming from the family side of things, because in my opinion, it's much harder to build a family than it is a career. It's much harder to build a family than it is to build out anything else, really. And it's the longest term project any of us will ever take on in our entire life. And so a tool that can allow us to get ourselves in order so that we can then bring others along with us, even as an evangelism tool, I think is so incredibly wonderful. I just think about how differently people would accept the gospel if they could look at Christians and see health.
Yes.
If they could look at Christians and see people that have things in order, people that steward things well, people that steward relationships and finances and health to an incredible level, I think that people would accept the gospel in a completely new light.
Yes. One of the things that I tell the advocates that work with me all the time, and these are women who are serving shifts in our safe house. So they're boots on the ground, serving women of sex trafficking. And I tell them all the time, I want us to be the healthiest, most peaceful, most joyful, loving people on the planet. Because if we're supposed to in some way inspire a woman who has been trafficked to take the hard steps that it's going to take for her to walk into freedom. This is Roscoe. Hello, buddy. Then we have to be showing them something that is inspiring enough for them to want what we have. Otherwise, I mean, why would they do all the work that it's going to take to make those changes in their life if we look as miserable as they do?
Yeah, why would they listen to you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Roscoe is now a part of the
Okay, awesome. Yeah, try to keep him
the
away
podcast.
from the mic.
I'll try to keep him away from the mic.
Yeah, cool.
Here he is. Okay.
So I want to talk about a little bit about being present for a second, because at the end of the day, I believe that it might not be the end game of what this is, but it is what gives this kind of meaning. Because if you're able to build a sustainable lifestyle, but you're not present enough to even enjoy it, then what's the point? And I think that we have a chronic lack of just presence, even in Christians, which is so infuriating to me. Because how are you going to experience the presence of God if you yourself aren't present?
Cannot be present.
How are you even going to know that he's walked into the room when you don't even know where you're at? When you're thinking about A and B and C, and we have all of these voices talking to us every single day. You guys have got our voices talking to you right now. Turn us off and try to listen to the Lord, right? But if you are constantly listening to every other voice on the planet, how are you going to be able to hear the small, still voice bringing you peace? Because at the end of the day, it's the only one bringing you peace. Nobody's voice can really bring you peace like the voice of God. It's on a different frequency. It's in a different realm. And it speaks to the part of you that doesn't belong here. It speaks to the part of you that was born for a different kingdom. It speaks to the part of you that is a citizen of heaven. And that part needs to be spoken into far more than your mind. As wonderful as strengthening your mind is, you need something to speak to this. And you can't do that unless you're present. You can't do that unless you're grounded in the here and now. You can't do that with your foundation firmly rooted in fantasy. You can't do it with your foundation firmly rooted in the negative effects that lust and pornography has had on your brain. You can't do it in the midst of financial stress and hardship where you're just worried about what you're going to eat the next minute. Like, you can't. You can't. You need to have bandwidth and margin, and you need to have something that will allow you to create that. So just talk about kind of your journey with being more present in that, and kind of how this helped you to do that.
So there's a little book. Roscoe's going to travel maybe, or he's just going to stand here. What in the world?
I'm going to keep him right here.
He's a little attention seeker.
Hey, buddy.
there's a little book that's old. I can't remember the name of the author, but it's called The Practice of the Presence of God.
Mhm.
It's like this big paperback. I highly recommend it. It is, it's life-changing. So basically, the author was a monk, and he had given his life to the Lord. He previously was like not a good person, gave his life to the Lord, and became a monk. And he was just the dishwasher at the, what do you call it?
Monastery?
Monastery.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a monkery.
A monkery.
The monastery. Um, but for him, it was like the ability to have presence. And as he described, just washing every dish truly to the glory of the Lord. Like, whatever I'm doing it, I'm going to give it my all because I just want his pleasure. And the time that he was able to give God his full attention and presence. And that's what I would say, like, when you talk about if we can't even be present with ourselves, then how can we be present with the Lord? And the truth of it is, if we cannot be still in his presence, our flesh is running things.
Yes.
And we may be trying to stamp God on top of it, all of our actions, and make them seem godly. But there's a scripture, can't remember where it is in the New Testament, that talks about having a form of godliness and it lacks power.
Yes.
And that's what I feel like, without presence, without me stilling myself, my mind, my body, my emotions, my imagination, like all of the things, stilling all of that and coming into wholeness in the presence of God, where I don't have parts of me that are running over here and, thinking about this and trying to solve for that and managing this and that. But my whole presence here with the Lord, I am not experiencing true peace.
Right.
I am not getting clarity. I'm not. And there's an author, Ann Voskamp, that wrote a book that I also, she's an amazing author, but she talked about, I remember the statement in that book that says, weigh the moment down with presence all here.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we're missing the beauty that lies in everyday moments of our life because we're not all here.
Yeah.
And for me, it's even when I'm cooking a meal.
Yeah.
When I'm cooking the meal, which I don't do as often as I used to, sorry. But when I'm cooking a meal, I want to enjoy the whole process.
Yeah.
I want to be present in the moment. I want to have music. I want to enjoy chopping up stuff and smelling everything. And there's something about just being in the present moment that makes every moment magical and more special. And when one of my pet peeves is trying to sit and have a meal with someone and they're on their phone the whole time. And I'm just like,
yeah. What's the point?
I mean, I could eat by myself and I'm still going to ingest food, but this is about connection.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many times I've been in restaurants and the entire family is on a screen. The kids are on iPads or phones and the parents are on their phones. And I'm just like,
should have stayed home.
Yeah, like you're spending a lot of money to do this right now. And I just think that we're missing the abundant life that Jesus said he came to give us because we're just scattered and not present for what's happening right now. And this is the only moment I can actually be present in.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be present in the past or the future. Like, this is the only one I get to live in right now. Mm-hmm. And I believe that we're going to have a fuller life and we're going to have a greater impact when we'll just let ourselves be present in the moment.
I truly believe that God is most often found in the in-between moments of our day that we often forget about. Mm-hmm. I find him in the shower. I find him in my car driving from point A to B. I find him waiting for my class to start. All of those moments are so invaluable because between these wavelengths of input that we get, there's this little area of bandwidth, of peace, of nothingness. And I like those new commercials that say, doing nothing is really something. I really believe that. And I just love it because when there was nothingness, there was God. And so the closest we can get to nothingness, I feel like the closer we get to him. So I hope that doesn't make me a monk or like talking about like emptying my mind or
We're
anything
gonna
like
move
that.
into the monkery.
I don't believe in any monkery type business. I just want to say that right here, right now. But I think that there's beauty in lacking, and I love that.
Mm-hmm. I feel like there's a correlation, and I've used this example before, but when the children of Israel were delivered out of slavery, one form of slavery in Egypt, and they're now wandering around in the wilderness, and they're having literally manna fall from heaven every day to feed them. And that's kind of amazing that every day you get sprinkled with your food. You just get to pick it up and eat, and you didn't have to sow a seed or water or anything. It's just like, here it is, there's your food.
Yeah.
But they were sick of it, and they were like, we want quail, like we're tired of eating manna. And so God was like, okay, you want quail now, huh? And he was like, I'll drop so much quail on you, it'll be coming out of your ears, right? And so he is just dropping quail all over the place, apparently. And they finally, after a certain amount of time, were like, please stop. Like, we don't need more quail. Like, it's too much for us. And it's hilarious to me how quickly they were like, no. And what I see in that is a correlation today with information and constant input. And I feel like it's just too much. And we're literally, there's no end to the amount of input I could have on any given day in a 24-hour time period.
Right.
I could nonstop be putting input through music, through TV, through podcasts, through I could have it all going at the same time. And sometimes that's what we're doing. But in the midst of that, I feel like there's a part of our soul, our spirit, that is just like, stop with all the quail, like just make it stop, because there's no rest in that. And I just encourage people, start with giving yourself breaks during the day. Just every day, put your devices in another room, detach from them for just a certain amount of time, and let yourself just take a breath, and start there. Just separate from devices and from constant input, and go for a walk without your phone or your music. Just walk, and get that margin from constant taking in more information. We don't need more information.
Yeah. Because
we really don't.
The thing that we need to realize is that your spirit is not from this world. Your spirit does not belong here, like I said earlier. And so the quieter you're able to make the world, the louder your spirit gets. Because, we're in the world, but not of it, as the word says. And so the more detached from the world we can get, the closer to heaven we get. And our spirit has a lot more voice. This is not our spirit's comfort zone. Our spirit is far away from home right now. And so try to make it feel at home. Have a safe place, have a hideaway, have a closet or a room or a back porch, or even just a special chair where nothing else gets to speak except for your spirit, and just watch what happens.
Even I think about, even if you just have a phone, how many different inputs can you have from just one device,
How
right?
many apps you got, right?
Like how many apps? It's just endless. And so that quietness that we create for our own souls is where we are able to then have the margin for creating, for vision. And I can't get vision for my life from someone else.
Right.
I can't. Your vision, you could say, this is what I envision. I can't even see it because it's in your imagination.
Right.
You cannot get vision from another source other than straight from the source, which is God.
Right.
And that's the only vision I want to live from anyways, is the one that he has for my life. But if I don't give him that time and that presence, then I'm never getting that download.
Right.
And I am just mimicking other people and what they're doing, hoping it'll give me some form of satisfaction. And it will be empty. It will not create what Jesus said, I came to give you life abundantly. And that to me is what I want everyone to experience. And then we do look different, smell different. Like we have an aroma that can only come from the throne room
Yeah.
on our lives. And then people are like attracted to what we carry.
Yeah. The world will force you to work your entire life to buy an empty well. But God gives out free flowing springs for free.
And they're within us.
Mm-hmm.
Isaiah 58 says that when we're tending to those things that he's put in front of us, then we become a well-watered garden
Mm-hmm.
that never runs dry.
Mm-hmm.
It lives inside of us. And that's how I want to live.
And guess what that means? You don't have to dig to get your source. You don't have to dig to get your fuel. Your fuel shoots out.
Yeah, it's just there.
It's so much more than abundant. And we talk about things like spiritual burnout. I'm like, how? If anything can burn out in all of your faculties, it's certainly not your spirit.
No.
You're not burning out in your spirit. It's the
That's
fact
a crazy phrase.
it's an insane phrase.
I haven't heard that. Spiritual burnout.
Yeah, I'm getting burnt out spiritually. When people, basically what they say when they're getting tired of reading their Bible or they're getting tired of worshiping. And it's like, that's the source that fuels everything else. So when you tell me you're spiritually burnt out, what I really feel like is you're not physically stewarding well. Something is out of whack in the physical realm, not the spiritual realm. Spiritual realm was doing fine long before you came along. And it will be doing fine long after you pass on. Spirit is well taken care of. You don't need to do any maintenance on the spirit.
It's the only part of us that is.
You need to do some maintenance on the thing that's holding your spirit.
Yeah, for sure.
I always thought that was crazy. And I think that this is just such an eye-opener on how much more spiritually awake people can be when they take care of what's going on in the physical world, when they take care of what's going on in their soul, their mind, their will, and emotions, and when they become self-aware enough to ask questions. So thank you so much for just talking a little bit about this and telling a little bit of your journey and how you've come so far with this. If you guys want to buy this, like she said, it is fully ready and available for everybody on Amazon. The link will be in the description. I don't think I get a discount code because I'm not that cool. But you can buy it full price. Have fun with that. Anything that you'd like to say before we depart?
I just thought about when you were talking about spiritual burnout. There's a scripture in, I think it's in Matthew 11:28-ish. And my granddad, he quoted this verse at the end of every sermon. He was a preacher. And that was like his, I guess, invitation. And later it was translated into the Message. And so it had different wording, which was kind of cool. But the verse says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke on you and learn from me, for I am meek and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And in the Message, he says, are you burned out on religion? And it's such a powerful translation. And I think when I think about that term of spiritual burnout, I think about we can get burned out on religion.
Yeah.
Which is, again, me trying to figure out what would make God happy, and let me just try to do all these things and reacting to what's around me. There's no end to that because this world is broken. And when I live from a place of I am in his presence and he is showing me my path, it's already lit in front of me for me to walk on. And in that path includes my purpose. It includes the impact I'm going to make without me having to jump off into all these different, lanes.
Of course.
And that, to me, I feel like the burned out on religion comes when we're outside of the presence of God and knowing what he has for us. And there's also a verse in Daniel that talks about how the enemy's strategy is to burn out the saints, to weary the saints. And so I just want to, in closing, just say to anyone who's feeling that, if you're in that place of feeling like I'm just spiritually worn out, I just cannot encourage you enough to just truly stop all the activity and the busyness and sit in his presence and let him refresh your soul, your body, your spirit, every part of you before you do one more thing, and let him fill you back up. And from that place, ask him, what are we doing together? Because Jesus said, I'm going to yoke myself up with you. It's like, we're going to do this together. And he's going to basically carry all the weight. So that's where you want to be, is with him. And I would just say, don't see yourself moving apart from him, trying to win his favor, but moving with him to where his yoke is easy and his burden for you is light.
Right. I love it. I love it. Well, I think that was a perfect closer. We're going to clock out here. We'll see y'all next time.